It's the middle of the afternoon. You already ate lunch 2 hours ago. You are not hungry. Not in any way your body actually needs to be fed. And yet here you are, standing in front of the pantry, or scrolling a delivery app on your phone, thinking about something sweet. Not water, not vegetables. Something sweet, specifically, and nothing else will quite scratch the itch. You didn't sit down and consciously decide to want this. It arrived already decided, fully formed, before you ever had a chance to weigh it against anything else. People on this planet consume something like 180 million tons of sugar every single year. And a huge share of it is eaten by people who don't need a single extra calorie to survive the day, let alone the afternoon. That should strike you as strange. It doesn't, and it never has. Because this craving is not a modern weakness, and it isn't a failure of willpower either. It's a 200,000-year-old survival instinct, and your body still can't tell the difference between a candy bar sitting on a counter and a genuine emergency. Here's the part that should really bother you. You were born already wired to want this. Not taught it slowly over childhood. Not conditioned by decades of advertising. Born wanting it, wired for it, from the very first day of your life, long before you had ever tasted a single processed food or seen a single commercial. So the real question isn't why modern food companies engineer products that are hard to stop eating. It's why your body was such an easy, willing target for that engineering to begin with. And the honest answer to that question starts before you could even hold your own head up, let alone talk. It starts, in fact, before you'd even taken a single breath of outside air on your own. Every human tongue carries a pair of proteins that lock onto sugar molecules the instant they touch your mouth, triggering an almost immediate reward signal that travels straight to the brain. This isn't something you slowly develop with age or experience. Researchers studying infant taste reactions found that newborns, sometimes only hours old, show a distinct, visible, relaxed, almost content expression the moment they're given a sweet solution to taste, and an equally distinct, disgusted, rejecting expression when given something bitter or sour instead. Nobody taught them that difference. Nobody could have, at that age, since teaching requires a shared language neither the child nor anyone around them has access to yet. Breast milk itself is naturally sweet, carrying a sugar called lactose, which means the very first flavor most human beings ever experience in their entire life is a sweet one, delivered by the person keeping them alive. From the moment you exist as a living, breathing person, your brain is already primed and waiting to treat sweetness as a signal that says, unmistakably, this is safe, this is good, take as much of this as you can get right now. That wiring doesn't get switched off later in childhood. It just gets buried under decades of table manners, dietary guilt, and conscious decisions you layer on top of an instinct that was running perfectly well before any of those layers existed. Researchers have even found that this preference intensifies during rapid growth periods in early childhood, when caloric demands spike sharply. Toddlers, pound for pound, often show an even stronger measurable preference for sweetness than adults do, precisely during the exact stretch of life when their bodies are working hardest to grow. Here's where it gets stranger. Some researchers studying human metabolism believe our craving for sugar isn't just about taste at all. It's about fat storage, and it runs a lot deeper than simple pleasure seeking. There's a hypothesis, sometimes called the thrifty gene idea, that suggests our ancestors evolved a metabolic pathway that converts sugar, especially a type called fructose, into stored body fat with unusual efficiency. The theory points to a strange, striking parallel found elsewhere in nature. Certain migratory birds go through the exact same metabolic shift before undertaking a long flight, deliberately gorging on sugar-rich fruit in the days beforehand and rapidly converting it into fat reserves to survive the journey ahead, a journey that could span thousands of miles with no food along the way. Some scientists argue early humans may have evolved a remarkably similar switch, a way to binge on sugar whenever it happened to be seasonally available, and store the resulting fat as fuel. to draw on through the leaner, harder months that were guaranteed to follow. If that theory is right, your craving for something sweet in the middle of an ordinary afternoon isn't a flaw or a weakness in the system at all. It's the system working exactly as designed, running flawlessly for a world of genuine seasonal scarcity that for you personally simply doesn't exist anymore. Researchers testing this idea have found that fructose specifically, more than other types of sugar, seems to trigger this fat storage pathway with unusual efficiency, almost as if the body treats it as a special priority signal, rather than just another source of calories to process like any other. Some scientists have even proposed that this pathway may partly explain why fruit, historically the only real source of concentrated fructose available to our ancestors, so reliably triggers feelings of satisfaction that go well beyond its actual nutritional content. The reward was never really about the vitamins. For a modern hunter-gatherer group like the Hadza of Tanzania, honey isn't a luxury food reserved for special occasions. Anthropologists studying their diet found it can make up close to a fifth of their entire caloric intake during certain seasons, more than almost any other single food source available to them across the whole year. And getting it is genuinely difficult, not a casual errand. Hadza honey gatherers will climb tall, unstable trees with nothing but bare hands and feet, use smoke to disorient the colony's defending bees, and absorb dozens of individual stings in a single outing, all in pursuit of a substance that offers essentially nothing but concentrated sugar. No meaningful protein to speak of. No fat. Just the purest, most calorie-dense sweetness available anywhere in their entire environment. When researchers sit down with people in these communities and ask them to rank the foods they want most, honey consistently comes out on top of that list, ranked above meat, above fruit, above every other food source available to them in that landscape. That's not some quirky modern sweet tooth showing up in an unexpected place. That's a species-wide priority list, largely unchanged, and sugar has been sitting quietly at the #1 spot on it for a very, very long time. Researchers accompanying Hadza foragers on these honey hunting trips have noted something else worth sitting with. Hunters will frequently pass directly by animals they could easily kill for meat, specifically to keep pursuing a bee colony they've spotted instead, even when the honey hunt will clearly take longer and carries a real immediate physical cost and stings. Meat is valuable. And sugar still wins the choice, consistently, across observed trip after observed trip. It isn't just us either. Researchers observing wild primates, chimpanzees especially, have documented something telling and remarkably consistent. Given a choice between fruit at different stages of ripeness, they will reliably walk past the closer, less ripe option sitting right in front of them, to reach the sweetest, most sugar-dense fruit available anywhere nearby, even when doing so takes considerably more time, more effort, and more risk. Sweetness, to a primate brain, has never just been a pleasant flavor sensation to enjoy in the moment. It functions as a direct, highly reliable signal of available calories. And calories are the one resource evolution has never, at any point, stopped optimizing every available system to chase. Humans didn't invent the underlying instinct to seek out and chase the sweetest thing within reach. We just became dramatically better than almost any other species on the planet at engineering entire environments where that ancient instinct never once has to go unsatisfied. Not even for a single afternoon. Some primatologists studying this ripeness selection behavior have even documented individual chimpanzees memorizing the exact ripening schedules of specific trees scattered across their territory, returning to each one on almost the precise day the fruit would peak in sweetness, a level of planning and long-term tracking most people wouldn't automatically credit to an animal, all of it organized entirely around chasing sugar. Picture the moment it actually happens. Midday, the sun sitting directly overhead, and a faint, unmistakable hum drifting out from a dark hollow in a tree ahead. Someone in the group stops walking instantly. They don't need to say a single word out loud. Everyone else nearby already recognizes that exact sound, and understands precisely what it means. A small fire gets built quickly at the base of the tree, just enough to produce a thick column of smoke, which someone fans carefully upward into the hollow to calm the defending colony before anyone attempts to get close to it. The climb itself is slow and deliberate, bare feet carefully finding old grooves worn into the bark. One hand always gripping something solid before the other one moves. A few stings land anyway, scattered across bare skin. They always do, no matter how careful the climber is. Nobody stops climbing for them, not even for a second. The comb finally breaks free from the hollow, heavy and dripping, and gets lowered down carefully, hand to hand, until it finally reaches the ground below. What happens next isn't restrained or polite in any way. People eat directly with their hands, honey running freely down wrists and forearms, laughing openly at the mess without a trace of embarrassment. In this exact moment, nobody standing there is thinking about calories, or nutrition science, or thrifty genes, or fat storage pathways, or any of the mechanisms we've just spent the last several minutes walking through. They're thinking exactly one single thing. With total clarity, this is the best thing we will eat all season, and it is finally here in our hands. That single feeling, pure, uncomplicated, overwhelming wanting, is the exact same feeling waiting quietly for you the next time you open that pantry door at 2 in the afternoon. Later, walking back toward camp with sticky hands and a satisfied, half-drowsy look nobody bothers to hide, the group doesn't discuss what just happened in any analytical way. There's no conversation about calories gained or effort spent. There's just a shared, wordless understanding that today was a good day. The kind of day that's worth remembering the next time that same low hum drifts out of a different tree. Here's the turn. For nearly all of human history, sugar in this concentrated, potent form was rare, tightly seasonal, and genuinely hard-won. A honeycomb guarded fiercely by furious bees, or fruit that was only properly ripe for a few short weeks out of an entire year. That built-in scarcity was, in effect, the safety mechanism. You simply couldn't overdose on a craving you could only fully satisfy a handful of times per year, no matter how strong the craving itself happened to be. Then, around 8 to 10,000 years ago, people in New Guinea began deliberately cultivating sugarcane as a crop, and the plant slowly spread west from there, through Asia into India, where people eventually worked out how to crystallize its raw juice into something that could finally be stored, transported over long distances, and traded between regions that had never grown it themselves. From there, it continued moving through the Islamic world and eventually reached Europe, arriving first as a rare, wildly expensive luxury item reserved for the wealthy. Then, centuries later, as a fully mass-produced commodity available to nearly everyone. Somewhere along that long journey, sugar stopped being something you had to climb a tree and absorb a dozen stings to earn. It quietly became something you could simply buy, in nearly unlimited quantity, on any single day of the year. No season required. And modern food science didn't stop there either. Food developers now openly research what's sometimes called the bliss point, the precise, carefully calculated combination of sugar, fat, and salt engineered to make a given food as difficult as humanly possible to stop eating once you've started. Your ancient reward circuit, the one originally built for rare honeycombs, and a few precious weeks of seasonal fruit, never got any kind of upgrade for a world that now has a drive-thru, a vending machine, or a delivery app on every single corner. It's still running the exact same original program it always has. Somebody just figured out, fairly recently, how to make the vending machine considerably louder. Food industry researchers have described this process with a chilling kind of precision, mapping out exact ratios of sugar to fat to salt across thousands of product variations. Discreetly testing which combination keeps a person reaching for one more handful long after any reasonable sense of fullness should have kicked in. None of this required inventing a new craving from scratch. It only required understanding, with real scientific precision, exactly how the old one already worked. You open a wrapper without thinking twice about it, barely registering the decision at all. They fought off a swarm of angry, defensive bees for the exact same underlying reward. You have it available in every gas station, every vending machine, every delivery app, running 24 hours a day without a single break. They had it for a few precious weeks a year, and only if the hive happened to cooperate and the fruit happened to ripen on schedule that particular season. You call it a guilty pleasure. Something to feel a little quietly ashamed of every time you reach for it. They called it survival, plain and simple. The actual, measurable difference between thriving through a lean season and barely making it through to the other side. You think you're weak for wanting the sweet thing at 3 in the afternoon, and you carry a small private guilt about it that never quite goes away. You're not weak, and you never were. You're running software that's a few 100,000 years old, built carefully for a world of genuine scarcity, dropped without warning into a world of endless, effortless supply. And nobody, at any point along the way, ever sent you the update. The Hadza foragers climbing that tree and the person standing at your own pantry door are, biologically speaking, running the identical program, responding to the identical signal, chasing the identical reward. The only real difference between the two of you is that one of you had to earn it with stings and hours of daylight, and the other only has to reach out an arm. This is educational stories from the foxholes. The next time you reach for something sweet, you'll know exactly whose voice you're actually listening to, and exactly how long it's been talking.